Okay, so I'm recording now, so you can
Okay.
start whenever you want.
All right. So before I begin, I'm gonna ask everyone to put yourselves on mute so we could avoid having that background noise. Sometimes cars and sirens go by, so it might scare like some people, or like it might distract some people. Um, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you could type it in the chat because our good friend Luis is going to monitor the chat, and then he could relay those messages or questions to me while I do my presentation. So let me share my screen. And host disabled attendee shares. Oh, I can't. Okay. Yuan, I am not able to share my screen apparently.
Okay, let me make you host real quick. Okay, can you try now?
Let's see. Share, does this work? Yes, I think so. Can you guys see my screen? Can you guys see? Okay, I was like,
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button.
Me
okay.
too.
All right, awesome. So I'm gonna start with a story, right? So a long time ago, there was this humble beginner web developer named Felipe, right? And he was getting into HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. You know what? With these skills, I'm build the best app ever, right? So this young, handsome developer named Felipe, he spent like 3 days and 3 nights developing the best app ever. And he came up with the best app ever. It was called Hello World. So he built this app, and he was all saying, hey, this is an awesome idea. It's an original idea. I'm gonna make millions, right? I want to show it to some people, but I only want to show it to a select number of people because I don't want this idea to come out like and have Mark Zuckerberg take it and make millions off it. So I needed a login, right? I needed like a login application, right? But I don't know how to do that. All I know is HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. I don't know anything of the backend. I heard of the backend, but I'm not familiar with like server technologies or anything with the backend. It kind of scares me because I'm in my bubble, in my front end bubble. So I don't know how to do any of that. But I do need a login page. I need, like the login page was gonna be like my bouncer. It's like, okay, you guys are on the list. You can see Felipe's app. You guys are not on the list. No, you can't see Felipe's app. So I needed that guy. I needed the login, my bouncer, right? So a lot of you guys are in that situation where you're like, oh, all I know is front end. All I know is HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But I do want to create a login page for my application. Like I don't want to show it off to the rest of the world, right? So this is where we officially begin our talk. It's IESD Presents Intro to Building a Login Page with yours truly, software engineer, Felipe Fernandez. So we're gonna break this talk into 3 parts. The first part is gonna be in HTML and JavaScript. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna build a page. It's gonna contain a form and it's gonna contain logic so that when the user tries to log in, they get redirected to another location. In this case, they're gonna be redirected to the IESD page, our fabulous, amazing IESD page. So that's all gonna be done on the front end with HTML and JavaScript. So in level 2, we're gonna use HTML, JavaScript, and Axios. So how this is gonna happen is, back in level 1, we had a set of hard-coded user data so that when the user logs in, they get redirected. And they're able to get redirected and validated because that user data already exists within the client. But on level 2, that user data doesn't exist within the client. It exists elsewhere. And we're going to use that Axios data to get that, or the Axios tool technology to get that data, bring it to the client. So by the time the page load is loaded, that information is already there. So when the user logs in, that data is there. So they're able to get validated and redirected to a different page. And in level 3, this is where we're gonna start dipping into a bit of server technology. So for those who are not familiar with the backend, this is a great way to start. If it's overwhelming for you, it's all right. This is just to give you that exposure. So we're gonna build a server, and that server is gonna do 3 things. So on page or on server instantiation, it gets that user data into the server. The second thing it does is that when the user makes a request to see our login page, that server gets that page and sends it to the user so they're able to see that page. So the server is like, he's our bro, right? He gets that stuff like, oh, I got you, bro. You want user data? I'll get you that data. You want the login page? I'll get you the login page. And the third thing that's gonna do is it's gonna have logic in the server. So when the user tries to log in, their data gets validated against the user data that it previously fetched. And if their credentials are okay, they're able to get redirected to our amazing ISD page. So let's get started with level 1. So in level 1, all it is the user and our client or the browser, right? So the user will interact with the client, and that client would use logic and all its HTML and JavaScript to get redirected to where that user wants to be. So let's start with a little bit of live coding. So I added some code here already, just for the sake of time. So we're gonna see how this looks. So I'm gonna open this in our default browser, or my default browser. And all it is a page with a form, and it takes an email, and it takes some password, and it takes in a login. I'm gonna open the Chrome tools so we can see our console. And of course, there's no errors. Awesome. So you can see this is our form, and below that is our script, our JavaScript. So for now, we have something called users, and it's equal to an empty array. And we also have initialize, right? And so how this works is when the page gets loaded, it reads the first line, it assigns users to an empty array, and then it calls this initialize function. And as you can see on line 23, there's this initialize function, and it doesn't do anything. I commented out get users. So the intention of this initialize is that it's gonna call get users. It goes to get the get users function, and there's the user's data, and then it sets this user's data to the user's variable, which exists up here. So if I comment this out, or I comment this back in, and I console.log users before and console.log users after, and you should see that initially it's a empty array, but once the initialize function is executed, it populates the array. So now we have our users data. So the next thing we want to do is we want that login ability, right? I'm clicking login. I type in email and password. And so what the user I'm going to use is user@email.com, and the password is going to be password. Very secure. So nothing's going to happen, right? We didn't give it that functionality. So I wrote some pseudocode here to help me know what to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the email value. So that could be done with a variable and assigning it to documents.getElementById. And we want the value of this input, and the ID of this input is email. So we have email, and we want the value of it. So the next thing we want to get is the password. So we have our document.getElementById, and our ID for our input is password. So we have password. And then we have value because we want to get the value. And we're going to console.log. Let's call this email. It's going to be, our email. And password is going to be our password, right? So I'm going to refresh this. Email, and then, so our email is our user email, and password is password. So everything's working fine. Thank goodness. So after getting our email and password, we have to validate the user. We have to make sure that this user exists. So this is where this function comes in. So we're going to find the user in our user's data using email and password. We're going to use those two values. And if it's true, if the user exists, we're going to return true. And if it doesn't exist, we're going to return false. So how are we going to find the user? So we're going to use the find method, which is a JavaScript method on arrays to find objects within matching objects within an array. The first matching object within an array. So actually, I'm going to use function. I'm going to use the, not ES6, I'm going to use the old JavaScript. So it's going to use this user, and it's going to, what's it called? It's going to go through the array, and it's going to look for a matching user with a matching email. If the email equals the user.email, and the password matches the user.password, we're going to return true. Else it's going to return false. Or it's going to return the user if it exists, and it's going to return undefined otherwise. So let's make sure this works. Okay, save it, refresh. So I'm typing password. Let's see. I think I made it. Did I save this? Oh, wait, I didn't call the function. That's why. So I'm gonna call this function is valid user. All right. And we don't have a matching password or email. So let's see if I did this right. Find for each user, return if email equals user.email. And let's see, maybe I didn't type it in right. And this is where I go to my solved and make sure I type it in right. Oh, user, oh, that's where I messed up. I typed in the wrong variable. So actually, I'm gonna call this valid user. See if I typed it in right. Users.find, return email, and okay, that looks all okay. And then, oh yeah, I have to pass in So the thing I forgot was I didn't pass in email and password. So it was getting undefined for those two values. So that's why it wasn't matching. So then, yes, so we have a match. So if I type in some other, let's type in 111, it's going to return undefined because that match does not exist in the user's array. So we have our validation working. So if there's a user, if user is not equal to undefined, return true, else return false. And of course I made some typos. Okay. So we got our validation complete. And I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to wrap this with an if statement. So if the user is valid, we want to redirect the page to our amazing IESD page. Else, we want to console.log not a valid user. Let's see, and a tier. All right, cool. I'm delete this and save it. And then let's see if this works. So we have our user email, and if we put password and we try to log in, and I can't see to get redirected. I'm gonna try again. Okay. Log in. Not logging in. Turn true. Window location. Oh, not triple equals. Single equals. Okay. We have valid credentials and we got redirected. Awesome. And you can see Tony here helping out someone. Tony's such a nice guy. So what if we have invalid credentials? I almost said invalid credentials. So if I log in, I have not a valid user and a teardrop, and that's very sad. Okay. So we created a login page for our client. So for those who have an application and they want to create a simple login page, not a fancy one, like you just want to get the basics down. This is an approach. There's other approaches you could take, but this is an approach. So now you did level 1. So we're ready for level 2. So back to our slides. So level 2. So what's going to happen is we have our client and our user's data. Our user's data does not exist within the client. In the previous example, it was hard-coded within the client. But in this case, they're going to live in a different location. So when the page loads, it gets the user's data and brings it to the client. So that data is there by the time the user tries to log in, right? So this, when the page loads, it gets the user's data, it brings it to it makes a request to the users, to the location where the user's data is located, and then it sends that data to the client. So this is the architecture we're going to take, the architecture we're going to build. So we have this already, right? So you can see here that our function get users, before it used to be a hard-coded array, but now we're using this tool. You can find it online, called Json Placeholder. it has a list of users and their information. It's just like a mock data that you can use to play around with, right? So right here, we're gonna copy and paste some items. So we're gonna copy and paste our form because the form is gonna be the same. Let's see right here. We're gonna copy and paste some of our JavaScript, actually most of our JavaScript. And we're gonna paste it over here. We'll go over here. And let's see, we got our users. And okay, let's see if this works by looking at our code. So when the page gets loaded, we have our users empty array. It's gonna trigger this initialize. And when this initialize gets triggered, it's gonna trigger get users. And this get users is gonna go to this Json placeholder. And just to see how the data looks like, I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it here. And you can see how the data looks like. So in this case, they don't have password, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use their email, but instead of password, we're gonna use their username as the password. So it's gonna get this data and we're gonna use Axios to get that data. Axios is very similar to, it does the same thing as JavaScript fetch, but it's a new tool that we could learn because fetch is not applicable to it doesn't work for IE 11. It doesn't work on all browsers. So Axios is able to make fetch requests in like 99%, like I would say 99% of browsers, whereas JavaScript fetch isn't able to do that. So what we could do after it gets that data, we get the response. And then that response, well, you guys could trust me. That response has a whole mess of data. It has the data, but it's wrapped around the functionality that, I guess, metadata that Axios gives it. So to access that data, we use res.data. So we're setting user to res.data. So that way, our users gets populated. So I'm gonna delete this and I'm gonna delete this. And so once we get our data set, and then just to make sure our data is correct, I will console.log. Is it users? That's what it is. It's not users. Yeah. And save. And let's see. So then when the user clicks login, our email and our password, we're gonna fetch that. We're gonna get that. And then our validate is gonna have to be different because we're matching the emails, but we're not matching the password because in our data, we don't have an item called password. So we're gonna match it against the username. So valid user name. So it's gonna work the same way. If it exists, then it returns true. And if it's undefined, it returns false. So that's a lot of code we wrote. Makes me kind of nervous because I'm not sure if it works, but that's not what I want. Oh, wait, I have to open the new page. Okay. Okay, so when our page is loaded, we get our data. So here is our JSON data. This is all our users that we could have, that we could use. So let's look at our first user. So this user has the name, let's see, what's the name? Or I'm looking for the email. Put this within our email, and then it has the username Brett. So I'm gonna type in Brett, and I'm gonna log in. And it works. We get redirected to our amazing ISD page. You see Tony again helping. And let's go back. Let's see if what happens when we type in an incorrect password. So I'm gonna type in 1111, log in, not a valid user, sad face. Awesome, it works as expected. So if you wanna go into that next step using that, let's call it using not hard code. Well, it's hard coded, but it's in a different location. Just to make that transition, that slow transition from front end to back end, you can use this mock data, uh, JSON, is it Json Placeholder? You can use that. I use that to test out data. And then it has a really good documentation. So it's really good for cases where you need mock data. So we've done level 2. We're leveling up slowly. We were at level 1. We were at level 2 now, and now we're at level 3. So this is starting to get into the big leagues. So the architecture is going to be a bit more complicated. So we're going to have a client. We're going to build this server, and we're still going to have our users' data. We're still going to use that JSON placeholder data. So what's going to happen is when the server, not the client, but when the server gets instantiated, it's going to make a request for the user's data, and the user's data is going to send that data to the server. So that user's data isn't going to be located in the client in the browser. It's going to be located within the server. So when the client clicks login, when they want to log in with their credentials, it sends a request to the server. So that server is going to process it. It's going to look at the data, and it's going to make a response to either redirect the user to the appropriate page, or it's going to console log not a valid user, sad face. And since this is a server, we're going to need some configurations. We're going to need some help from modules. So this is going to be a Node Express server. So we're going to need to use npm modules. So modules are just packets of data that have packets of code, modules of code that we can use instead of writing all this code on our own, because there's a lot of code that we have to write, and it makes it easier. It's been vetted, it's been tried and true. So we can use these modules with confidence that they're going to work for our situation. So the 3 packages that we need to install are Express. Express helps writing the server easier. It's just it has a really good methods that we can use to write a simple server. Badi Parser, that's our second module. Badi Parser is just a tool to parse data. So whenever the user clicks login, it's going to send a request to our server, but that request is going to have all this data that we don't need. But there's a portion of the data that we do need. So Badi Parser is like a module code that helps parse that data so that we could process it, we could manipulate it. And then of course, our good friend Axios. Axios does the fetching of the data. So we're going to have 4 steps to create this. We're going to start by creating a server with Express. And then we're going to set up our home route. So this home route is the route that the user gets sent to, or it doesn't get sent to, that the user makes a request to get our initial login page. Our third step is to have our server fetch the data with Axios. So the server, whenever it gets initially instantiated, it's going to fetch that data, that JSON placeholder data, and get it into the server so that exists inside the server. And the fourth thing we're going to do is we're going to create our login route. So that login route is for the user. Whenever the user clicks login and makes a request, it's going to go to that route. And then that request, of course, is going to send that data. So that data is going to go to the route. And then we process that data, we validate it, and then we redirect the user to the page they need to go, or we don't redirect them, say sorry, you're not a valid user. Okay, so let's get started with level 3. So level 3 is going to be a bit more complicated. We're going to have to start by writing this command called npm init. So this allows us to install these modules, this Express, Badi Parser, and Axios. It does this. So I'm going to type in npm init -y. So there's, let's do it without the -y. So it's npm initialize. That's what npm init stands for. And my package name, wait, I'm in the wrong location. Control C. So I want to go actually cd level 3. Where am I at? Oh, level 3. Okay, so now I'm in the level 3 directory. I type in npm init, npm initialize. So then it asks me a question, what do I want my package name to be? Level 3, sure. Version, yeah. I usually just type in enter for all of these. A short way of doing it is just put npm init -y, what I was gonna do before, but I wanted you guys to see all this. And is this okay? Yes. So now I'm gonna close up solved, close up level 1, level 2. Now we have our level 3. We have this package.json. It helps us manage our code and it helps us run scripts. So the first module I want to install is Express. So I type in npm install Express. So this is for those who are not familiar with server technology. This gives you a little bit of exposure. So if you're overwhelmed, it's okay. So if we go to package.json, we have our Express module right here. So that means we have access to Express now. So I will see how this main says index.js. So this tells us that we need a new file. Index, call it index. Did I put in the right location? Okay. So the reason I'm calling it index.js is so that just so it could match with this, and also it helps because I'm going to create a start script to run this application. And the command for that is node index. It's telling node to run index.js. I could type it out here, but usually you see it as npm start and it runs your application because it could be more than just one file. Okay, so let's save this. Okay, so now I have to create my server using Express. So I'm gonna use a bit of ES6 for that. So require, there's this this thing that Zoom does that I can't even, that makes it hard to see. Can you guys tell me if I typed that right?
There's an extra quotation mark.
Okay. What do I need? Tell me what to type.
Before the E, you have an extra.
I have to delete. Wait, extra quotation mark.
There
Oh,
you
okay. Require.
Cool.
Good. See, if you ever guys do a Zoom presentation, there's this bar at the very top, and it blocks some of your code. Okay, good. But I know I could trust you on. You know, he always has your back.
You can make your window smaller so it goes below that.
Yeah. I like asking people for help, especially Johan. He's that guy, that type of guy that always gets your back. Okay, so so I'm using this Express. So to create an Express server, this is just setup. You could read this in the documentation, but all you need is like 3 things just to have this express variable and that require express, and you have a const app. It could be anything, but you have to set it equal to running the express method, and then you need just the app.listen method, and what was it? Oh, here it is. Awesome. You need the port number, so I'm gonna make it listen to port 3000. And what the heck? I think you just need a callback, right? Let's see. Let's see if I remember how to do this. Listening on port 3000. And then, all right, a little party popper here. Okay, so we built our what the heck? All right, and oh, all right. The dangers of live coding, right? Typos. All right, so I want to run my Express application. So I could do it 2 ways. I could type in node index.js, or I could just type in npm start, npm run start, and it will run my Node.js application. So npm run start, and let's see if it works. And it works. Our server is operational. So our step 1 is done, listening on port 3000. So the next thing we have to do is, I forgot, set up the home route. Oh, so this is a bit tricky. App dot, so this requires some configuration, and I'm gonna need the help of my solved thing. Oh, app.get. So I'm actually gonna copy and paste this, and I'm gonna explain it to you guys. So app.get. So whenever the user tries to log into our, not log, but go to our page, this is considered the home route. So when they get to the home route, it's gonna, well, this is the, just consider this as setup for now. This is considered the request, and this is the response. So the request is, I wanna get to the home route, right? But we're not doing anything at the request. It's just that the user wants to get there, right? But there is a response. And the response is, we're gonna send the file. We're gonna send our login.html. We haven't created yet. We haven't created the public folder. We haven't created the login HTML. And then that exists. So this is also a bit of configuration. So whenever you're doing these servers, there's a little bit of configuration involved. You have to read the documentation to find out what that configuration is. So it's saying that the root of it is in the current directory, and it's sending the root to the current directory. And so look into the public folder, and you'll find the login.html file that you need. So we're gonna create a new folder. Not there. We're gonna create it here. We're gonna create this new folder, and we're gonna call it public. Boom. And then we're gonna create a new file, and I'm gonna call it login.html, right? Boom. Awesome. So now, instead of creating this login.html from scratch, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to this existing login.html and copy all this. So we go to, it's right there. Wait, no, I'm just gonna copy the whole thing, copy the wrong thing. Okay. Awesome, fantastic, right? And I'm gonna remove the JavaScript because I want the server to do the actual work. There's lots of ways of doing this, but for the sake of teaching you guys like server technologies, I'm gonna have that logic within the server. So this has to change because we can't call the onClick this login function. It doesn't exist within our client. So we're gonna have to delete that. And let's leave it like that for now. And so let's make sure this works. We just want the file to be posted whenever we go to our homepage. So I'll show you what happens when it doesn't have a home page. So if I go to, let's see if I could just click on localhost 2000. So localhost 3000. If I go here, there's nothing. It can't get anything because the get hasn't been set up. But once I have that applied, I have to restart my server. I need to restart my server for the changes to be applied. There's tools that help you like rerun the server. Okay, so our page appears. Yes, we have our page appearing on our browser. Awesome. That's step 2, I believe. Set up the home route. Okay, step 3 is a bit more complicated. So have the server fetch data with Axios. Okay, so but we do have the logic implemented on our client. So the logic is supposed to be very similar, but just located on the server. So we go back to our login, HTML2, and then we're gonna copy this JavaScript code here. And our index is right here. I'm gonna put it here. So, okay, cool. Let me format this a bit better. Okay, cool. So when a server gets instantiated, it's gonna have this users array. It's gonna run initialize. This initialize is gonna trigger this get users. So we have get users here, but this Axios, we don't have Axios right now, right? Because we have our Axios in our login page, but we're not doing our get requests there. We're doing our get requests within our server. So we're gonna need the Axios module. So Npm Install Axios. Boom. So if you ever need a module, you could try Googling it, and you should get information on what module you can use for the certain situation you're in. Okay, so we have initialize, we have get users. Oh, and then we have to create a variable for Axios. So Axios equals require Axios. Save that. So let's see if our logic makes sense. So let's see, function, no, get users. So Axios.get res users equals res.data, console.log users. And we don't need login right now. So let's comment that out. We might need it later. And we don't need is valid user right now. Comment that out later. So when this server gets created instantialized, it runs this get users, and this get users is going to get the data, and we're going to console.log the data, and that console.log is not going to appear on the front end, but rather in our console on our server right here on the back end. So let's save this, and I'm going to run the server npm run start. 24,000. Okay, and you see that data appears right here. Awesome. So we have the data that we need. We are done with step 3, but let's make sure our front end still works. Yeah, we still get that page. Awesome. So let's see where we're at. So we're at step 4. So step 4 is the most complicated step. We have to set up our login route because this involves changing our HTML page. So you saw in our HTML page, that's how it looked like before. We did remove that on-click functionality because it's not gonna send data to a JavaScript function. It's gonna make a request to the server. So let me look at my right here. So you notice that I'm just gonna copy and paste this. So right here, so there's gonna be a couple changes. Two of the changes I made is having this action login and method post, because using the post method in the HTML form sends that data, and this login tells it what route to send that data to. And the last thing I'm gonna do is type in submit, right? Because this submit is what triggers this method and this action. So let's see, back to our index. So we're gonna need this login route. So since it's a post action, we're gonna have to use app.post, and we're gonna have to use login. We still need this request and response. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna get that data. And that data exists with requests inside the request. But the problem with that is that when it sends the data, it's all wrapped in this other metadata, all this other data that we need to parse through. So to help us with that, we're gonna need to install Badi Parser. So Badi Parser is gonna help us parse through the data that's sent from the client. So again, we're gonna need, call it here. We're gonna need to set it here. And this Badi Parser requires some configuration. So I'm gonna go to my solved code, and I'm gonna paste this Badi Parser configuration, and I'm gonna copy this Badi Parser configuration. I'm gonna paste it here. So we have this Badi Parser. This is just configuration to help us parse the data. So okay, so okay, cool. So I'm gonna start the server. And index. Can I use, so I have this error saying, can I use app before initialization? So I use this app.use, but then I declare app right here. So this needs to be moved down. And I'm gonna save it. So app is declared, so I can use app.use. And okay, we get our data. So then we have, let me refresh this. So inspect this, just in case we get some errors or anything like that. And then I'm gonna type in user email. I'm just gonna type in 123 and click login. And then we get our information here. So our information gets passed from our client to our server. Awesome. So now we can manipulate this information, or we could use this information to check against the user's data that we have. So this is gonna be similar to this. So what we could do is, what I'm gonna do, just make it simple. Oh, so it won't be let email. Okay, so we're gonna use let email equal request dot body dot email, and let password equal request dot body dot password, right? And then we're gonna actually use this function right here. Yeah. Yeah. If is valid user, we're gonna send in the email and the password. So we're gonna use something called res dot, I think it's called redirect. Yeah. We're gonna redirect them to our ISD page, which is this right here. Right else we're gonna we're just gonna console.log. Oh, we're gonna send res. So we're gonna use res dot, I guess, yeah, send. I think we could just send some text, not a valid user. And amazing sad face right here. Sorry, or a sorry face. Okay, cool. So let's make sure our logic is correct. When the user logs in, tries to log in, we check their body email. We're gonna validate this user. Our validation function still holds true. Makes sense. And then if it's valid, then we redirect them. If it's not valid, we send some text saying not a valid user. So we save this. Let's make sure logic is okay. Taking one last look, it makes sense. Right here, we run our server. And then, all right, we refresh. Refresh our page. So let's try one that exists. So remember sincere at april.biz, we know that one works. And we know the password for it is Brett. So B-R-E-T, go log in. Let's cross our fingers, hope that it works. And it works, awesome. Yeah, fantastic. But now let's try it with some code that doesn't work. All right, so let's try 1. Let's try the number 1. So let's see what happens. Not a valid user, not valid user, sad, we don't have access. Cool. So the takeaway I want you guys to get from this is you could make that transition from front end to server. You could make gradual steps to it. So this exposed you to how to make a login page on the front end with just basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I know if you're starting out, you have these basic, like this, not basic, but these applications, these really cool front end applications. Just like a couple days ago, I saw one of our members create this really cool looking to-do list. So they could have a login page for that, just to get that exposure to like logging in, server technology, or like data and validation, all that. And then slowly make that transition into using server technology to create a validation. How I did this is not very clean, but I just wanted to show that transition from just creating a login in the front end and then slowly transitioning to creating like a login validation system in the back end with a server. So that's it for my talk. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Felipe Fernandez, and have a great day, guys.
Awesome talk, Felipe.
So is there any questions or is there any feedback from any of our attendees?
There is no questions in the chat. But so I do have a few, like when you were stuck, when
Yeah.
when the first time you were doing all these tests and you were stuck, like what were some tactics you used for like to troubleshoot it?
Oh, console log is your best friend, man. So like I know there was a case where I got stuck. Um, uh, I remember, what did I do? I console logged something and it didn't give me what I expected because I was rehearsing this a few hours earlier, and then so I know what I'm supposed to expect to see, but since I didn't get that, I knew like something was wrong. So I just went through the code line by line. Sometimes so when you see me code, I like going through the logic first rather than just running it like just all the time, right? Because I feel it's important to understand the logic. Because understanding the logic, I feel makes you a better developer, right? Because then you won't have to keep like throwing spaghetti code against the wall. It's like, oh, will it create a beautiful work of art? If I just keep throwing more spaghetti more and more times, I'm gonna get a fantastic piece of art eventually. You may, but it's gonna take you a long time. So go through each line of code before you run it, or do a general skim if you're like short. Like I get impatient sometimes. Just go through a general skim, and then make sure it all kind of makes sense, and then run it. If it still doesn't work, console log is your best friend. Console log where you want your values to appear, and you could see your expected values.
All right, we do have a question now. They are asking if we may see the recording in some place. I will post some links for our YouTube channel and also our Facebook channel where we also upload our videos. Those are our links. And also they ask another question. How do we ensure that a browser sends only a hash of the entered passwords to the server and compare versus hash passwords on the server?
So for hash passwords, I usually do, so I send the password, like how I typically deal with passwords and user information like that. Whenever, let's go back. So whenever the password gets, okay, so this is, this has to do a little bit with the sign up page also. So I just wanted to get the login page, but with the sign up page, so when you do a sign up page, you send the password. Well, how I usually do it is you send the password, and when it gets to the server, I hash it on the server, and then that hash password gets saved on the database. So then the actual password doesn't exist anywhere. It's just a hashed version that exists in the database. There's a tool called bcrypt, and I use that to hash the password and save it on the database, right? So bcrypt does is it hashes the password, but also could revert the password. So when a user tries to log in with their password, it takes that password, compares it with the hash password, and it has this tool where if the let me see if I remember. I think it reverts the hash password.
It does.
It compares. Yeah, it compares the two if they
It
match.
has a function for it.
Yeah, it has a function for it. I'm not sure if it changes the hash password to a regular password or changes the password to the hash version, but it somehow has this function called compare to, where it compares the two, and if they match, they're validated and they have access to whatever resources they want to have, like whatever they wanted to get into. I hope that answers your question. So if you want to learn more about hashing, and you want to do it on server side, look up bcrypt and or bcrypt tutorials on YouTube or on the internet, and you'll get a lot of information on that.
Yes. So our member was saying that so in case the server is breached with that bcrypt tool, the password itself is not leaked.
So there's additional tools
Well,
besides bcrypt for keeping your stuff safe. So I mean, it can be, but it's not just bcrypt. There's Helmet. Um, there's other stuff. I haven't played with network security too much, so I'm not too entirely familiar. But I mean, there are resources. Like I used some of these resources a few times, so I know like bcrypt, Helmet, and there's other tools out there.
if I can
Felipe?
interject,
Yeah,
Felipe, um,
you probably
if
use
I
it
could
more
just
than me.
butt in here real quick. So the password itself, when it's saved on the database, it's not saved, just naked, just the string. It's actually encrypted by bcrypt.
Yeah,
So the purpose of bcrypt is to not save passwords, just text strings. These are actually encrypted when you save them into the database, and we use bcrypt to unencrypt them, right? Because there's a whole algorithm that's generated when you install bcrypt that you set up, um, and once you're using that password, it just uses the decrypt function or whatever it is called to verify that that's correct.
yeah.
It,
Is
it
there a way? Okay, so let's say I'm logging in, right?
yeah
And I type in a password, blah 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 blah, and
yeah
it sends that request to the server, right? Is there a way for that to get compromised in such a way
most likely
that
a man in the middle attack.
between client and server, like there's some sort of
Of course,
interference?
yeah, but this is why you utilize things like HTTPS and SSL
Yeah,
certificates
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
encrypt the whole connection between the client and the user. But
yeah,
regardless, in today's world, it would be impossible to operate with the mentality of we're never going to get hacked. So not only do
yeah,
you have to protect things, but you also have to have a plan in place for when people do get in and for when people actually take your data.
yeah,
So the mentality here is when they get in, what are they going to see? Are they going to see my password that I use for everything, or are they going to see something that's encrypted? So I
yeah,
would rather them see something that's encrypted, and then they can try to spend, however many years they want to, unencrypted. So that's
yeah. I
all.
mean, there's no guarantee. That's why always write really good passwords. Use special characters, numbers, capital, like write 15 character
Yeah.
passwords.
So Johan, so what happens is that based on the password that you provide when you create your account or whatever it is, it creates a like a hash, right? So what it does is that it now every time you input your password, what it does is it adds that to the algorithm, and it checks that it matches the hash that's generated that's saved on the database. That's all it does. So your string, your clear text password, that's all it's used for. It's not stored anywhere, right? That's the beauty of bcrypt.
So does this mean that the password is sent to the server in clear text, then hashed once it arrives at the server?
It's only used to verify every uh, time that you try to log into the account, but it's never saved anywhere, right?
Yeah. And it's also like it's able to detect if the some man, I'm shaking on these tools. It's been a while since I used them, but there's also a way to detect if who sends it, if it's the correct person that sends the the password and the request, right? Then they're able to like recognize that and then give that person access. But if it comes from a different location, sometimes I read this article. Sometimes that's why when you get that notification, oh, you've logged in using a different computer, right?
Yeah,
Hey, what's up with that, right? So that's another way to make sure that you are the correct person.
you can
Because
incorporate that into the system.
yeah,
Checking the IP address, and then you can have a whole system where you can whitelist per account.
yeah,
That's not too complicated.
yeah. So yeah, it's just, I mean, you're always gonna get hacked. But then you also have to create these measures in case you do get hacked. What are you gonna do? And then other alternative ways to prevent these hacking, like to notify people when there's a potential of being, or when there's a case that you might be hacked.
Yeah.
So one of our members is also asking, so had the same questions, whether there is a way to instruct my browser to only send a hash to the server, so that even if my communication is intercepted, then only hash is intercepted.
Do you want to take it or?
I don't know if there's a way to hash from the client to the server. I know there's like HTTPS, all these like packets that are involved, but I think, yeah, Yuan, I think that question's for you.
Yeah, so Johan is pointing out the use of SSL certificates. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing anyways for any site now. That's the way Google is moving everything. But think about it this way: if you were to hash on the client, now you're exposing your hash components, right? Your encrypting components. I don't know how familiar you guys are with creating login systems, but I don't think we have it for ISD, but you can create something like a token, right? That you can save as a HTTP only cookie on the user's client, and that's generated by the server itself. So that's something that you can. Again, there's no way that you can say nobody's gonna get into the server. If they really want to, they're gonna get in there if they have the tools, right? So it's more about what can you do once they do get in. So your password is gonna go to the server. It's not gonna be saved anywhere. So the best that you can do is what Johan is saying, right? But that channel could carry a clear text password that is encrypted, and when it arrives to the server, it would be decrypted and be in clear text. So I'm trying to figure out if I can avoid. I mean, sure, you can have something on the client side in the interim that, it's like a temporary. I'm sure bcrypt has some sort of method for that as well. I understand what you're saying now. So what he's trying to do is kind of, I mean, isn't that what SSL is doing anyways though?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sure, you can add an additional layer.
Yeah, I also have to take into account like speed, right? If you log in and it takes you 3-4 minutes to get your resources, that's gonna affect people from using your application. So I know like people using your application, that's money for big companies. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration whenever you're building like a security system.
Yeah, so SSL encrypts the whole connection between the client and the server. If you, I'm trying to figure out if I can avoid sending the actual password from the client to the server for authentication.
Yeah, these are great questions. In fact, June is coming up, so the first week of June could be like a security awareness week. So if you guys know see any good security articles or login articles, validation items on YouTube or on like medium.com, feel free to post in the general.
What is the name of? There's a strategy you can use with him. I just used it on something I was building. It's like a 3-piece security strategy. Let me get the name of it and I'll post it. Where you have the token, the bearer.
Oh, that one. Ah, shoot. The token, the bearer comes within. It's like a JSON thing.
Yeah.
Not JSON Web Tokens. It's not. No.
I think it might be
JSON Web Tokens.
I
feel like.
Yeah, I'll look it up and I'll post it in general or something.
Yeah.
Because I know we're using it for Spark.
Oh. So Spark is a secure application. It's good to hear.
Yeah, but those are really good questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other feedback or comments?
No, I think thanks a lot, Felipe. It was a great presentation.
No problem. So like everyone noticed on the channel, I hope that we created, or on the Slack that we created additional channels. So we want to increase our members to engage with the Slack to promote networking, because I know we all used to meet in the like site building, and people got connected. People met each other like, hey, what's up? What are you building? What are you building? Right? And people got connected in that way. They're able to like know what to study, know what jobs are out there. So we created these additional channels on the Slack so people could have something to talk about, something to network. So on my part, I created a fitness channel, and I know a gaming channel was created. So feel free to join that on the Slack.
Yes, please.
And yeah, you want some people to game with. You know, he's a big gamer. So I did. What, you still into Fortnite, man? You still do those headshots?
Fortnite, R6, 7 Days to Die, lots of games.
Oh, see.
I also posted the link to our Slack channel in case you're not there. That's where John's gonna post that tool, hopefully. 3 numbers.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, if you guys see any other articles related to security, feel free to post it in the general too. Yeah. Awesome. Great questions. Great feedback from our members.
We have another question. What is the name of your IDE you're using?
Oh, so this is just VS Code, Visual Studio Code. I have, yeah, Visual Studio Code. Just regular old Visual Studio Code. You could go to, you Google Visual Studio Code, and you should be able to download it. Yeah, I like how it looks.
Yes, Visual Studio
Code. It has really good plugins too.
Yeah, so it is a JSON Web Token.
JSON Web Tokens?
Yeah, it's a secure way to transfer information from one point to another. So let me post a link in a minute.
I heard, I read about this. I heard there's a big controversy between JSON Web Tokens and sessions. Like there's a big battle, like which one's more secure?
And which one?
Between JSON Web Tokens and using sessions.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah, I like JSON Web Tokens is a new thing, and like because it's in JSON, everyone's like, oh, awesome. And then there's another group that's saying, yo, it's not entirely secure. Sessions is still good. You know, don't forget about sessions. It's a tried and true. I mean, sessions, well, I haven't used these things, but well, yeah, a little bit. But sessions are, I mean, they've existed. They've been around. So they've embedded. JSON Web Tokens is the new technology. And I mean, it's been good from what I read, but it's just, you know, new technology with the old technology, that back and forth.
All right. Well, for this presentation, most of the work you do, what are your like the VS Code extensions that you would recommend?
So I recommend something called where is it? Do I have them? I don't have. I did an update and something happened to my file.
Second to last.
Yeah, I've installed. Where is it?
That one. Second to last. That one.
Oh, I have enabled here. Oh, I don't like. Oh, that's it. Oh my! Enabled live share. I remember enabling that. Oh, okay. This is for pair programming. Oh, so I like open in browser. That's what lets me do right click and then, oh, not on this, but on HTML docs, right click and you open in browser. Peacock, I don't know what that is. There's something called brackets colorizer, I think it's called.
And also, it really depends on the work you do, what extensions you could get, but mostly you could always install ESLint. That will help you like write cleaner JavaScript code, Getlens, HTML snippets.
If we're collaborating with people over Getlens is really good, because if someone like messes your code and then you're like, what happened? Who broke my code? You get to see the person who did the commit on that line of code, and you go, hey man, what'd you do with the code? Or if there's some code you don't, it's more like if there's some code you don't understand, you get to see who wrote it, and then you can ask that person, can you help me out with this code? That's a good one. I like bracket pair colorizer, this one here on the upper left, because I get mixed up with my brackets sometimes. I thought I had this on this editor, but I guess I
For
don't.
that, I use also Indent Rainbow.
Oh
Makes it
yeah,
easy to
that
read.
one's a good one too.
And we have another question. Have you tried Live Server? It allows the same function, but it will auto load the page when you save. So basically, it saves yourself from having to hit refresh.
Yes, I've used Live Server, but I have problems with it when I'm building stuff with React or when I'm building it with Angular. For some reason, I don't know, what did it do? Like things wouldn't load the way it's supposed to load. Like I would get random errors and it would take me a long time to find out what those errors are. But when I turn off Live Server, when I turn off Live Server, it would work. So I don't know. Maybe it's just on my system. Whenever I use React or Angular, I have those issues. That's why I don't use it. But it might work on your computer. So if you're using Live Server, like I've used Live Server before when I first started. When I started using React and Angular, I would have these problems. But if it still works for you, go ahead and use it. But if you encounter some weird problems, I try shutting off your Live Server and see if that fixes some of your problems. Good question.
Awesome, Felipe. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you
Wonderful
guys.
stuff.
You guys were a great crowd. If you guys have any other ideas for talks, anything you want to hear about, any other topics, feel free to post it in the generals. Like, hey, I want to hear about this. I want to hear about that. We're glad to hear our members' suggestions because it helps us know what to focus on, what topics to focus on. So it really helps us out. And it helps us out by you guys like attending. So thank you guys. Thank you very much for attending. Cool. So I guess we could end our meeting right now.
Okay.
All right, sounds like a plan. Thanks everyone for joining, and
Hey,
we'll
thanks, everyone.
see you next week.
See you next week.